All right, welcome. Today we are diving into an absolutely incredible story. It's about how a massive global crisis didn't just tweak history, it completely rebuilt an entire field of science and basically created the medical world that we all live in today. So, have you ever wondered how the United States became this global leader in biomedical research and pharmaceuticals? I mean, it wasn't some slow, gradual process. Not at all. It was actually a sudden, explosive transformation, all lit by the spark of a single global event. And that event was World War II. The answer was truly forged in that crisis. A really desperate military need kicked off this radical experiment that jump-started the entire modern medical innovation system we rely on right now. To really get the scale of this change, we have to look at what the world of medicine was like before the war. And to be honest, it was, well, kind of quiet, disconnected, you could even say stagnant. Think about it. Before 1940, American biomedical research was just fragmented. You had universities doing their thing, private drug companies doing theirs, and the government over here doing its own thing. They were all in their own little bubbles. And that's the key. They weren't working together. There was no integrated system to speak of. Let's break that down a bit. Pharmaceutical R&D spending? Tiny, a drop in the bucket compared to today. And how are new drugs discovered? Often, it was just by chance, not through a formal scientific process. And the NIH, the institution we now see as this research giant, was a pretty small agency that mostly kept to itself, rarely funding outside researchers. And then, bam, everything changed. The start of World War II created a medical crisis on a scale the military had never, ever seen before. And the system they had, it was completely unprepared to deal with it. To get a feel for just how urgent this was, look at this number. 1.02. In World War I, for every American soldier killed in combat, 1.02 died from disease. Just think about that for a second. You are actually more likely to die from an infection in a cot than from a bullet on the battlefield. Now check out this contrast. By the time World War II ended, that ratio had plummeted to just 0.07. That is a staggering difference, and it was no accident. It was the direct result of a deliberate, massive effort to solve what the military saw as its number one threat, disease. This quote really nails the problem. See, the challenge wasn't just about finding better ways to treat old infections. The war created totally new medical problems. You had pilots facing oxygen deprivation at insane altitudes, soldiers dealing with extreme trauma from brand new weapons, and troops fighting off tropical diseases they'd never even heard of. They needed a radically new approach. So, facing this unbelievable crisis, the US government didn't just, throw a little more money at the problem. No, it completely reinvented how science was done. This was America's big push. And right at the heart of this whole thing was a temporary agency called the Committee on Medical Research, or the CMR. Its mission was simple but totally revolutionary: coordinate the entire nation's scientific talent, from universities, hospitals, private companies, and focus it like a laser on solving the military's most urgent medical problems. This was the first time the government had ever made a major investment in external medical research, ever. The way the CMR worked was a total game changer. They identified the problems, then they funded the best university scientists to work on them, and then, and this is so important, they brought in private companies to actually mass produce the solutions. For the very first time, you had government, academia, and industry all working together on this massive scale, with one central group managing the whole shebang. The most famous success story to come out of this model? It's gotta be penicillin. I mean, in 1941, it was basically a lab curiosity. There wasn't even enough of it to properly treat a single patient. But the CMR coordinated the research, convinced these skeptical companies to jump on board, and by D-Day in 1944, there was enough penicillin to treat every single Allied soldier. It was a true production miracle. Now, the CMR was a huge success during the war, for sure. But its deepest impact, that came after. This 5-year experiment didn't just win battles, it created the blueprint for the future. And the data? Oh, the data. It shows this triggered a permanent explosion in medical innovation. Okay, so take a look at this chart. The blue bars, those are drug patents that don't cite any scientific research. The reddish ones are the ones that do. And before the war, you can see it is almost all blue. This tells you that most new drugs were the result of trial and error, a lucky break, not a systematic scientific process. It was the age of the happy accident. Now, this is where the story becomes crystal clear. On the left, you've got the companies that didn't work with the CMR. Their innovation, it pretty much stays the same. But on the right, whoa, look at the firms that did. That explosion of orange bars, that is a tidal wave of new science-based patents. They learned the CMR's method, and it permanently changed how they invented medicine. And here's the final result. This chart shows the change was permanent. The whole wartime effort didn't just create a temporary blip. It kicked off the sustained upward climb of science-driven innovation that has basically continued for decades. This, right here, was the birth of the modern pharmaceutical industry as we know it. So you see, this revolution wasn't just about finding a few new drugs. No, the real legacy of the CMR was the creation of an entirely new system for innovation, a system that we've inherited and that we still rely on today. The CMR's novel experiment literally became the blueprint for the modern NIH, which took its model of funding outside research at universities and ran with it. It proved that large-scale collaboration between universities and industry could achieve incredible things. It pioneered this whole concept of a government-led mission to solve a huge scientific challenge. In short, it built the integrated system that turned America into a medical superpower. And that leaves us with a pretty powerful question for today. We're facing enormous medical challenges, from Alzheimer's to cancer to whatever the next pandemic might be. This history shows us that when the stakes are high enough, a coordinated, mission-driven big push can fundamentally change what is possible. The only question is, can we do it again?